Hi, Di. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. Nice to see you.
Councilmember Tao, it's so good to have you back.
I know, I saw his face pop up and I got a big smile.
Hopefully he can hear us.
It kind of doesn't seem like it.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I have to reboot my computer. I'm not getting sound.
Sounds good. Okay, maybe we'll get going. I suspect this is going to take them a few minutes. So call the HRA to order. Roll call.
Brenmoen,
Here.
Jalali,
Here.
Naker,
Here.
Prince,
Here.
Tao,
You will be
Top-
back. He's here.
right, okay, Tobert,
Here.
Yang,
Here.
7 present, 0 absent. Item number 1, resolution public hearing 21-188, authorizing the issuance and sale of conduit charter school lease revenue refunding bonds under Minnesota statutes sections 469.152 through 469.1655 for the Nova Classical Academy project, 1455 Victoria Way, and approving related documents. District 9, Ward 2. The public may provide comments on Res PH 21-188 during the public hearing by dialing 651-266-5860, or may listen to the meeting and provide comments during the public hearing by dialing 1-877-820-7831, passcode 180664#.
Director Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert, Commissioners. This item is a public hearing and approval for the HRA to issue up to $6,250,000 in conduit lease revenue refunding bonds for the Friends of Nova Classical Academy. The proceeds of the bonds will be used to refund outstanding bonds issued by the HRA in 2011. Debt manager Jenny Wolf is on the call if you have questions, as well as bond counsel Jenny Bolton, representatives from the bond underwriter, and representatives from Nova Classical Academy. And staff recommends approval of the item.
Any questions or comments? Okay. If not,
There are no calls from the public line.
great. This is a public hearing, and there's nobody here to testify. Councilmember or Commissioner Jalal.
Thank you. I'm asking a clarifying question. I can't recall a time where I voted on an item to refund bonds. I voted to issue them. Is there a meaningful difference in that, or what does that mean exactly?
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Jalali. Thank you, Chair Tolbert. Jenny Wolf, can you just to be certain that it's explained accurately? Do you answer that question?
Sure. Since the Commissioners, Chair Tolbert and Commissioner Jalali, the bonds, they want to pay off the bonds with the new proceeds. So the HRA does have to approve the issuance of the new bonds, but they are specifically for the purpose of refunding the old bonds. But since they are new debt of the HRA conduit debt, we have to approve that issuance. So probably the only difference is the fact that the project's already there. It's just refinancing your debt.
Would it have a functional impact on the school's expansion or construction plans, or is it just them continuing to implement their existing plan and refinancing?
I would let the school answer that question. The director is on the line, but the proceeds are only used to refund existing bonds, so it doesn't generate any additional source of funds.
Okay. And would you like to turn that over to Nova? Is it Mr. Wedland? Is he the director or who?
Yep, thank you. Thank
He's
you.
the-
Yeah, I can take that. My name is Brett Wedlin. I'm the executive director at Nova Classical Academy. Basically, with this refunding, it's all about getting the lower interest rate on our existing facility. It's not tied to any future plans for expansion or any future plans for an additional project.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Great. Awesome. Any other questions? Not. Commissioner Bremlo?
Thanks. Just a quick question. And I think I'm just trying to be consistent as well, but we definitely have charter schools across the city that have field access and gym access that are desired by community members. And I'm checking to see what sort of access you make available, your turf field and other facilities that you've built with public funds in terms of just general access to the public. And that's to the school director.
Yeah, when the current field was built, there was an agreement in place between the school and the city allowing some public access to that on weekends, and that's still in place. There's a rental process for public to gain access to the indoor facilities, including the gym, but the field just has open public hours as it is right now.
Great. So, and just following up on that, so there's just a built-in time that the public can access your fields.
Yep, there's a time we have a supervisor come in, unlock the gates, and the turf field is open for public use.
Right. I know that was a contentious issue, and I appreciate the work getting through that. And I think that is something I'll look to my colleagues to say that we can and should be expecting of other charter schools. I know that some that we've talked to, you can rent the space or you can gain access to it if you pay, but there's not just open public hours. And I think especially given it public funding and their that it's something that we should be expecting from facilities. And I do appreciate that you do that through the agreement that you brokered with the city. Thank you.
Commissioner Nager?
Thanks, Chair Tolbert. I appreciate Commissioner Brunmo raising that question. And Mr. Wedland, I know at one point there was a question too, not just about the accessibility of the field, but also about signage to let the public know that they are publicly accessible at certain times. Can you just update, is there signage up so that people know that the field is available for public use?
I believe so. I would have to double check at present. I know I've seen it at times, but I really haven't walked around it much with COVID the last few months. But there was at one point on the gates hours posted and that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you. I don't think there's any other questions. It doesn't look like. I would echo my colleagues' statements. I think particularly if charter schools consider themselves public schools, they should have public access to their fields, and especially if the city is going to be involved with the conduit bond interest rates, not only having the access, but making them seem welcoming. I think that's kind of been the rub with Nova is that fields might be open and the playground might be open, but they don't necessarily look like they're open to the public. And so just making sure they're welcoming, I think, is important to this council. And so we just reiterate that for all those who come to get conduit bonds. I will say I do think I've been down by your playground, and I think whoever had the idea to put rock climbing clips on the wall, a blank wall, it's a really good use of a space that normally isn't used. And so brilliant idea. I hope other schools do something similar, but I will say the playground does look generally open from what I could tell being down there. So thank you for that. There's no other comments or questions. This was a public hearing, and is there still nobody that has called in to discuss on the public lines?
That is correct. There are no calls.
Okay, great. Then I will take a motion to close the public hearing and approve from Commissioner Naker. Roll call, please.
Brenmuen,
Aye.
Jalali,
No.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Yang,
No.
Chair Tolbert.
Yes.
5 in favor, 2 opposed, that being Commissioners Jalali and Lang. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 2 is an executive director's report, SR 21-126.
Director Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert, Commissioners. We'll cover a couple of things for updates today. First, Chair Tolbert, you had asked for an update on the emergency rent assistance, and Housing Director Kayla Shuckman is here to bring an update on that, and then I will provide an update on the inclusionary zoning study. So we'll start with Director Shuckman and then update on the emergency rent assistance.
Director
Thank
Shuck.
you. Thank you, Chair Tolbert, Commissioners, and Director Goodman. I'll give an update on the emergency rent assistance program, but I wanted to first just give some details on the eviction moratorium off-ramp as background. So on that front, prior to June 30th, 2021, there was an eviction moratorium in place statewide through executive orders issued by Governor Walz. The state legislature passed a bill that was signed into law on June 29th, overturning that eviction moratorium and providing for an off-ramp process where the protections under the eviction moratorium will be ended in phases. So where we're at in that off-ramp process as of today is that landlords can evict, terminate, or non-renew leases for households that have materially violated their lease other than for non-payment of rent. And landlords may begin evictions for households who are eligible for a COVID-19 emergency rent assistance program, but refuse to apply or refuse to comply with the application process. There are several other upcoming phases in that off-ramp process, which I'll briefly outline, but the important date that I want to leave you with is October 12th. So I'll come back to that date, but and just provide sort of the whole overview. So the next phase in the off-ramp begins August 13th. Beginning August 13th, landlords can terminate leases of renters who are behind on rent and aren't eligible for a COVID-19 emergency rent assistance program. Beginning September 12th, landlords can also begin to file evictions against renters who are behind on rent and not eligible for a COVID-19 emergency rent assistance program. And then that brings us to that critical October 12th phase. Beginning on October 12th, all protections preventing lease terminations and eviction actions across the state are lifted, except that landlords cannot file or proceed with an eviction action against a household that has a pending application with a COVID-19 emergency rent assistance program. So what that means is that for households that haven't yet applied for a COVID emergency rent assistance program or aren't sure if they've applied, we really want them to reach out to partners and apply or confirm their application status prior to October 12th. For households that have a pending application for a COVID-19 emergency rent assistance program by October 12th, landlords may not file or proceed with a filed eviction action for non-payment of rent through June of 2022. So that October 12th date is really critical. There are 3 COVID emergency rent assistance programs running in St. Paul right now. There's the St. Paul Ramsey County tenant-based COVID emergency rent assistance program administered by Community Action Partnership of Ramsey and Washington counties. Second, there's a landlord-based emergency rent assistance program that landlords can apply to called the Zero Balance Project. And that's a partnership with our friends across the river in Minneapolis and Hennepin Hennepin County, as well as Dakota and Ramsey counties. And that's being administered by our partners at Family Housing Fund and Housing Link. And lastly, the third COVID emergency rent assistance program is being run by our state partners, Minnesota Housing. And this is a very large statewide program available to St. Paul renters called Rent Help MN. So an application by or on behalf of a renter to any one of these COVID emergency rent assistance programs by October 12th can help eligible renters maintain eviction protection through June of 2022. And all programs are currently accepting applications. So landlords and renters can access these online or by calling or emailing one of our contracted field partners that we are working with, which include Hmong American Partnership, CLUES, Latino Economic Development Corporation, and McLemore Holding. So that's the overview, and happy to take questions.
It looks like we have a couple. We have Commissioner Yang and then Commissioner Jalali, excuse me.
Thanks, Chair Tolbert. Director Strickman, I have a few questions for you. Do you, like in our city here in St. Paul, do you have any idea on like what statistics might look like for how many renters currently have a pending location? And like overall, do we know how many renters are on the verge of being evicted from their homes as well?
Chair Tolbert, Commissioner Yang, I don't have current numbers. The Minnesota Housing's Rent Help system is publishing, I believe, a daily dashboard that provides updates. And there are significant numbers of applications in for St. Paul. And I don't want to throw out a number because it will be wrong. But we are seeing good access in the state system. And the St. Paul Ramsey County program just launched, so we're a little bit slower there, but we're getting up and running. And then on the zero balance side, I believe that we've made maybe around $500,000 in payments, and we have another close to 700,000 pending for St. Paul. I'm not sure if I answered all of the questions.
Yeah, you did, and I have a few follow-ups too. Can you share for the three programs that you mentioned? I'm sure right now, like there's already a lot of people in the community who have input on how we can make like the application process a lot simpler and more convenient for tenants as well. Do you know like how flexible the criteria is and being able to be, you know, changed so that it's more equitable and also like simpler as well? Because if I've looked at them too, and I know that I have conversations just over the weekend when Councilmember Prince and I, we had our conversation with Eastsiders about emergency rent assistance, and some of them have mentioned how difficult it is for them to be able to just submit their application and gather like all of the information needed for it. And it'd be so much simpler to be able to just get that payment immediately and in the quickest way possible. So is there any like flexibility in all that, or are you being able to, is there like a table of leaders who are constantly reshaping like the criteria as well?
Chair Tolbert, Commissioner Yang, St. Paul and the local jurisdictions were part of working with Minnesota Housing on their Rent Help MN portal. And the portal is up and running, and I think receiving a lot of applications successfully. Our program actually is launched outside of the Rent Help MN portal. And so, you know, a lot of what you might be hearing is probably not specific to St. Paul's portal, because our partner, Community Action Partnership of Ramsey and Washington County, actually has a very simple application tool that they were able to use for the CARES Act rent assistance dollars that they administered. And so we really feel like the system that they had in place that we were able to tweak to meet Treasury's rules is really centers sort of the user experience for renters and some of the considerations that we heard from community partners convened by the Alliance. And the feedback that we heard about, not requesting social security numbers if we didn't need to, not requesting, breakdowns of every month of utility payments that folks might be behind. And so the application portal that St. Paul and Ramsey County have launched, we have launched with the one of our very top priorities to be simplicity and ease of use. And CAP has been a really great partner at designing that system and absolutely open to feedback and continuing dialogue about how to make that program easy. The Rent Help MN portal is also up and running, and I think there are certainly partners at the state that would welcome feedback. I'm confident.
Thank you. That's really helpful info. And lastly here, can you share what is being done to share this information out to communities, especially the ones who are communities of color or working class families who may not know about this important service that is available to them?
Chair Tolbert, Commissioner Yang, Minnesota Housing has received in the first round of emergency rent assistance, I believe it's just under $290 million. And with the federal government providing a 10% admin fee, that's a relatively large administrative budget, though of course it's a very large program. But so there is significant statewide marketing budget that's supporting getting the word out. At the St. Paul Ramsey County level, we have contracts with 4 field navigator partners that was funded by the City Council through the CDBG CV dollars. And those partners are responsible for outreach and marketing of our program, selected through an RFP process, and considering language skills and connections in community. And so we are relying on those partners. We also are working to, we've just recently gotten our website sort of up and running and with full information. We also are with Ramsey County working on printing just some good old fashioned flyers that our St. Paul staff will be at events tabling throughout the summer. We'll be asking our partners throughout the community to help us with that and just trying to get the word out really on the ground.
Thanks so much, Director Schickman.
Great. And I have Councilmember Jalali, and I see your hand, Councilmember Prince.
Thank you so much, Director Schickman. I received a constituent question yesterday from a constituent who lives in public housing, and they asked, can people who live in public housing and are in the public housing system access Rent Help MN, or are there different rules because we are public housing residents? I wanted to know if you knew more about that.
Chair Tolbert, Commissioner Jalali, public housing residents are eligible to apply. So the Treasury regulations say that our rent assistance can't be used to cover the portion of the rent that the PHA covers, but the rent assistance can cover the tenant paid portion of the rent.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for the clarification and really appreciate it.
Commissioner Prince, you still have a question?
Well, actually, it was mainly answered, but as long as you've given me this opportunity, Chair Tolbert, I'll take it. I do want to say, as this council's representative on the Community Action Partnership for Ramsey and Washington County, that I'm really happy to hear that CAP-RW has been a great partner, and that it has, and I'm not surprised that it has distinguished itself for being user-friendly and accessible. And my other question was how the word is getting out there, which you did answer pretty clearly. I think that is the thing that people are, there's just so much noise out there that I think the more we can do to put people in direct contact with someone who's going to make it easy and accessible for them is really important, because there certainly has been news that the system is hard to use, the money isn't getting out, and I think it's great that we've had this report today so that we can convey a much more positive message of the money's available. There are different ways to access it. We can put you in touch with those providers. And so thanks for this update.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would echo that. As much as we can get that information out there, I would encourage my colleagues, if they haven't, I think quite a few have, but share it on your social media so people are aware of it. But as much as we can do for outreach, and also with these dollars, I know we're working hard and we're trying to check off requirements and ensure that people qualify. But I think this is relief money like much, and the most important thing I think is getting it out the door as quick as possible for people who need it yesterday. So I would just encourage us to continue to get this money out the doors, because for a lot of these families, when that eviction, when the time runs out, it's going to be too late if we don't help them in the meantime. So I would encourage to keep pushing and get the money out as soon as possible. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this program? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Director Shipman. Director Goodman, it sounded like you have another topic you'd like to cover.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Director Schuckman, and thank you, Chair Tolbert and Commissioners. I'll move on just to a brief update on the inclusionary zoning study, which is a study not actually limited to the possibility of inclusionary zoning for St. Paul, but rather a study of various anti-displacement tools, policies, and strategies to be considered for St. Paul. So as you know, and as we've discussed in the past, we have a significant housing shortage at all levels of affordability, particularly at the lowest levels of affordability. Housing prices have risen at all levels, and the housing cost burden is very high. Throughout the city, and particularly in certain geographies, such as along the Green Line and University Avenue corridor, for example, real estate transitions, developments, and redevelopments are taking place. And with that development comes market pressure and a genuine risk of displacement of current residents in the area. The scope of the study is to examine the feasibility of anti-displacement and community wealth building tools, programs, and policies, generally within 4 buckets. I'm going to share my screen just so you can see those as I'm talking through them. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see if I can get what I need here. Can you see my screen? I can't see you if you can see my screen now. So
I can see it. Okay,
thank you. So the study of tools, policies, and strategies toward anti-displacement and building community wealth. You have all seen a draft RFP, and I'll get back to that in a moment, but it's generally in 4 buckets: regulatory controls, which could be citywide or area specific, including inclusionary zoning, policy or ordinance, which could be mandatory or incentive-based approaches, rent stabilization policy or ordinance. So those are a couple of the regulatory controls that could be studied. Property tax and value capture strategies, including property tax increase mitigation programs and tax increment finance, tax abatement, land disposition policies and real estate models, maybe looking at our land disposition policies and processes, and then additional or new use of community ownership models such as community land trusts, cooperatives, or other innovative financial equity models that build community wealth. And then access to capital and pathways to support homeowners and business property ownership. Support for production and preservation of home ownership for existing residents. Business assistance such as pre-development support and low interest financing to support community small business. I'm going to stop sharing because I'm having a little bit of issues here. I'll finish that sentence. Business assistance such as pre-development support and low interest financing to support community small business and real estate development activities. I'll share my screen again just here in a second to give you a schedule. So we have drafted an RFP, which we have shared with you for review and was essentially ready for release. However, since you saw that draft, We very recently have been awarded a Met Council funded LCDA pre-development grant focused on anti-displacement and restorative development measures specifically connected to the Reconnect Rondo project. So there is some overlap between the draft scope for our RFP and the LCDA grant scope. So quickly before we finalize that RFP, we're going through the two scopes now to determine areas where the efforts could be coordinated or even somewhat combined. The same type of consultant would be needed to do the work involved in both efforts. So potentially the same staff could manage both efforts. So there could possibly be some cost savings, definitely some efficiencies within the two efforts. So we had hoped to get the RFP out by the end of July with the review of the LCDA scope and just examining those possible efficiencies. That will take just a little bit longer. So I'll share my screen one more time, see if I can share with you kind of the timeline I'll give you.
Commissioner Naker had a question. I don't know if it's something
okay. Yep. I'm sorry, I can't.
No, thanks, Chair Tolbert. I can wait until Director Goodman is done. I was just kind of getting in the queue.
Okay. This will just take a moment. So here's a tentative timeline. Release of the solicitation by August 16th. That depends on how quickly we can get through procurement and CAO review and approval. So sometimes that takes a little bit longer, but assuming that, then everything plays from that date. Give a week for submitting questions and another week for us to answer questions. The responses to the solicitation due at the end of September. Staff review and selection process, including finalist interviews by November 8th. Decision by November 15th. Then it takes us a bit of time to get a contract executed. So we're saying January to get that contract executed, and 9 to 12 months for completion of the report, depending on which consultant is selected and the final scope of the contract and the schedule. So I will be happy to answer questions. I just wanted to bring that update so you know where we are in that process.
Commissioner Naker?
Thanks, Chair Tolbert. Director Goodman, really, really, really happy to see this work moving ahead. I know it's been something we've all been talking about for a long time. I appreciate the fact that it's gone beyond inclusionary zoning to be more inclusive of lots of anti-displacement strategies. And I also want to thank you for your constant attention to how we can work smarter, not harder, in terms of taking a grant for one thing that's very closely aligned and just doing one RFP, one consultant. That makes a ton of sense to me to be efficient like that, even if it takes a little bit more time to get it out the door. I just wanted to ask about the rent stabilization policy that's on there. I know we are going to have a rent stabilization ordinance on the ballot this fall. Wondering if this is the same policy that we would be studying and how it relates, since depending on how the votes go, we might have one whether or not we study it.
Agreed. Thank you, Commissioner Nager and Chair Tolbert. That's an excellent question. And we've been trying to watch that timing because the ballot measure is in November, and obviously we're talking about not having a decision until November. We do believe that some study, even if the ballot measure passed, and that some study of how to implement, how to work within that within the measure or in implementation would be useful. So that's the one piece that we'll kind of see how it goes, and our thought is that we would pull that piece of the study like to the very front, and depending on how things go. So we are watching that carefully, tracking with the ballot measure, and looking at how that could work. I had a conversation with Luis about that earlier today, so that's an excellent question.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions on this? Director Goodman, I believe you were finished, but I just wanted to double check.
Thank you. Yes, I am finished.
Okay. Awesome. Well, will bring us to the end. Oh, just in the nick of time.
Thanks, Chair Tolbert. One thing I just want to say, I'm very excited about the potential of Reconnect Rondo, but it suddenly went from this thing we were kind of hearing about for the last many years to now having a $6 million funding award. And now you mentioned that this LCDA pre-development grant is for that. I think it's really important that we as the HRA board and also as the city council be brought up to speed on Reconnect Rondo. Where is it at? I happened to catch about an hour of a meeting that occurred, I think sometime yesterday, I streamed it on Facebook, of a group called Preserve Rondo that is just really asking good and thoughtful questions about what, this is suddenly looking like it's happening, and all of us need to be brought along. So I just want to say that on their behalf and on our behalf, that I think we've got to do some catch up here at the city on that enormous project, because the price tag is about $500 million. And, I think that coincides with about what we spent on the Green Line, or what the cost of the Green Line project was. I mean, in terms of anti-displacement, I'm really, really, really glad that we are looking at that, because of course, any investment of $500 million is going to result in outcomes that we sure don't want Reconnect Rondo to be more displacing activity than bringing together of, repairing the injustice of the original demolition. So I just put that out there as a time for us to rev up the engines here.
Thank you, Commissioner Prince and Chair Tolbert. I 100% agree with you. I've been asking those similar questions since I got here to St. Paul, and so our team has been tracking very, very, very closely. Many of the members of a few of the members of my staff have worked on this project for quite some time. But as you mentioned, it's really growing legs now, right? And and some visibility. So we've had many of the same questions, even some of the same questions that that the group that you've mentioned has had. I think it's a great thing that we're involved with this anti-displacement study. That is what they point to when you ask how are you going to achieve those things? They point to that study. So we will be deeply involved in that, and we'll continue to bring updates regarding that effort to the degree that we are involved. And I know that Executive Director Keith Baker would, I'm certain, be willing to provide an update as well on the efforts from their end.
Great, thank you so much.
Great. Any other questions or comments? If not, we can be adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you so much.